back into a moment in your life, perhaps when you were on a brink of a new job interview or something exciting that is happening in your life. But then as you started working towards that goal, that nagging voice in the back of your head told you, you're not gonna make it. Are you sure you're gonna do this? What if you fail? Hi everybody, I'm Dr. Ru and I'm a psychologist. I'm here to help you unpack the human mind. I'm here to offer solutions to complicated problems. My channel is all about showing you easy ways to manage struggles and find possible solutions to get you stronger. So stick around. Today I'm going to share with you things that you can do to manage that inner critic, that inner nagging voice that comes whenever you're feeling like you're not good enough. So let's unpack this and start making sense of what is the inner critic to begin with. The inner critic is like this nagging voice inside your head that often tells you negative things about yourself. It's that part of you that doubts your abilities, that criticizes every single action that you're taking, and generally makes you feel like you're not good enough. It might say things like, you're never gonna be able to do something like this, or something along those lines of, you're gonna mess this up. The problem about this inner voice is that it's very convincing. It makes you feel like you are indeed not good enough. It makes you feel like it's protecting you from some kind of failure. But in fact, it ends up blocking you and taking away the things that you actually aim or set yourself to do. So why do we even have an inner critic, you're asking? From a psychological standpoint, we start having and developing those inner core beliefs from a very young age. It could be as a result of the interactions that we have with our parents, with our caregiver, with teachers, with friends, anything that comes in contact with us that help mold that identity that we develop as younger children. It might start as a rule setting, as a way for us to navigate our societal restriction. But later on, it becomes something so much bigger. It becomes that inner critic that we take on and we continue to have in our day-to-day experience. But as we grow older, it becomes more and more critical. There is also the hypothesis that from a psychological standpoint, that specific inner critic voice is a protective factor. It's there to protect us from engaging in what we call a dangerous behavior, something that potentially will put us in harm's way, when there is no harm. Not all situations are going to be life-threatening. And sometimes we see rejection from societal or norms or interactions with other people as something that essentially will create so much distance and put us in harm's way. Now you might ask yourself, how does my inner critic even manifest in my day-to-day experience? But in everyday life, that inner critic may pop up in different directions or different situations. At work, for example, you might be sharing ideas in a meeting, but because that inner critic says, your ideas are not good enough, and what makes you think that people are not going to laugh at you? You might also notice that inner critic shows up in relationships. You could be hesitant to even make new friends or make connections or reach out because that inner voice might tell you no one would even like you. And what about personal challenges? What about when trying to do something new? I mean, for me, just setting up this camera and all this rigmarole around, my inner voice can get loud sometimes, and I'm sure yours too, whenever you're facing a new task, a new responsibility, something that you haven't done before. That self-doubt can become so loud. It could say something like, you might make a mistake. What makes you think that you're good enough? So even in personal challenges, that inner voice might tell you, you might as well just give up. And it might even show up in a way where you face yourself in the mirror. When you look at yourself and you feel bad about parts about who you are, criticizing, judging, and making comments that are negative. So I want you to pause for a moment. This is a good reflection point. And I want you to think about all the ways that your inner critic is showing up in your life. How does it appear? What does it stop you from doing in your life? What are some of the goals that it stopped you from achieving? In this episode, I invite you to check out my notes. I drop a reflection worksheet for you that invites you to ask those questions that will help you come face to face with that inner critic and better understand yourself. Leave me some feedback. Let me know how that worked for you. And I'd love to know if this information was helpful. It's important to understand that our inner critic, when it goes untreated, undetected, just without any awareness, can bring a lot of major issues that could develop to things like depression, anxiety, and self-doubt. When you're constantly hearing that nagging voice about how you're not good enough and things that you cannot do, it will get in the way of you achieving things. And over time, that inner voice and that negativity is going to bleed into every crane of your existence. Because at some point, you'll start believing some of that negativity. It might feel like you're becoming more anxious because of it. It might feel like this judgment is ongoing and never stopping. And if this inner critic stays there longer, again, untreated and unnoticed, you might notice that it increases level of depression. More importantly, you might notice how that inner critic is lingering in your voice long enough to then deter you from taking action, from doing behaviors that are actually important to you. So that inner voice doesn't just affect how you feel, but it also affects how you are behaving now. It might change the trajectory of the action that you take or plan on taking. So you might start avoiding challenges, you might start avoiding taking on new tasks, and we all know that this could lead out to miss out opportunities. Some of the things that you may have missed out on in your life. Now, I don't know about you, but when my inner voice gets really loud, it's sometimes even hard to think and make decisions. So my decision-making ability could be compromised because of that inner critic. If your inner critic is always second-guessing you, putting you in a place where you're constantly doubting yourself, how will that affect your decision-making? Another area that is also important to think and consider is how does it affect your procrastination? Are you finding that you are kicking the can over and over again because you're afraid of what that inner voice, that inner critic might tell you? So it's easier to just put things way ahead, not think about what I need to do next. Because when I am facing that specific task that I'm taking on, I'm noticing how that inner critic is becoming louder and my anxiety increases as well. Finally, another major area where the inner critic can get in the way is in your relationships. And my friend, I'm also talking about your relationship with yourself. Inner critic can chip away on the importance of the relationship that you have with you. It's so hard to feel confident when there is a constant chatter in your head about those things that you cannot do. Self-efficacy is essentially the ability or the belief in your ability that you can accomplish and do things. And over time, you might notice that a strong inner critic chips away at that self-efficacy. You might start to believe that you are not good enough. You might start to believe that it's harder to take on challenges and it's harder to be successful. So your self-esteem and your self-efficacy and your relationship with yourself and other people all suffer because that inner critic is uncontrolled and unmanaged. Now that we know all about that inner critic, let's talk about what to do with it. I'm gonna share with you a very effective tool called the CARE method. So stick around, make sure you take good notes, and make sure that you apply this information. Again, download my handbook. I really want you to gain the most experience out of it. So download that, follow along, make sure that you ask yourself appropriate questions, and I invite you to participate in this so that you can maximize your benefit from this experience. Before we go into it, I do invite you to subscribe. I really value your feedback, and I want to make sure that I'm here for you. I don't want you to miss out on any valuable information, so make sure to hit that subscribe button. The CARE method is a 4-part component. We are looking into providing consciousness, making sure that we are aware and mindful of that critical inner voice. The second part about it is to acknowledge. You want to acknowledge and recognize that this voice is part of you, but not entirely you. And I'll break it down, I promise. Then we have the part where we invite you to releasing any kind of judgment, any kind of setback that might hold you. And I invite you to offer yourself with empathy. Empathy is such an important component of that care method, and I want you to apply it in a way that is beneficial. So let's dive into it. So the consciousness part is being aware that you even have that inner critic going on in your mind. And it can get a little tricky because we always have a constant voice chattering in our mind. So as we said, the first part is consciousness that the mind is even there. So I want to share this story. Imagine that you have this little monkey, but this monkey is the most unhelpful monkey you've ever seen in your life. It puts you down, calls you name. Every time you try to do something, it's just very chaotic. Now this monkey is creating havoc. It's all about small brain operation, swinging around your apartment or house and causing havoc and chaos. And every time you try to do something, this monkey goes like, here we go again. You are useless. So for example, you are trying to cook a meal and end up burning this meal. This monkey comes and goes like, here you go, useless. You might as well just give up. You know that you can't be a chef. Why even try? Why even bother? Well, look, you burned that dinner again. Of course you did. You should just give up. You'll never be one of those people who can cook anyway. How long would you endure this monkey? How long would you be willing to allow yourself to be exposed to this kind of negativity? A few hours? A week? A month, if you're really willing to tolerate this behavior? But ask yourself, how long have I been putting up with this monkey in my head? I'm going to take a wild guess, and I'm going to assume that it's about your age. That's how long you've been putting up with your monkey. What I want you to start doing is to acknowledge, be aware of that monkey whenever it's creating havoc. I even invite you to name it. Give your monkey a name. It's not going anywhere anyways. Be playful and start recognizing it as soon as it comes to the surface. Consciousness, that's the first part. The second part is acknowledgement. Recognizing that this sound, this voice is a part of you, but not really you. If I notice my tone of voice in my head, I take myself much more seriously. If I use I statement when I'm criticizing, then that's something that is going to resonate and stick longer. But can I really take Monkey Joe seriously? Probably not. Can I even come up with a different voice for Monkey Joe? It's going to be fun, and I'll be able to acknowledge it and recognize it and probably not internalize it and take it seriously. Acknowledging it is a second part about it. You will be able to identify your monkey because your body is talking to you. Notice that when your inner critic is talking, your heart rate might increase. You might feel flushed. You might feel that agitation, that anxiety building up, that nervousness in the pit of your stomach. That's when you tune in and start noticing your monkey talking. Pay attention. Acknowledgement. The third part is releasing. You are going to release any harsh judgment. This is not the time to give yourself or put yourself down in any way. Notice what your monkey is saying and say, my monkey, whatever name you came up, let's say Monkey Joe. Monkey Joe is saying this. And by recognizing it and releasing it, you're not holding on to judgment. You're creating some distance between you and that thought, and you're observing it in a way that does not leave you attached to that thought. Watch those thoughts instead of engaging with them like clouds in the sky. One thought comes and you just watch that thought drifts away. Another thought comes and just keep watching it drifting away. The more you get into the habit of observing without engaging, you'll see that you're letting go of that judgment. When you learn to observe your internal experience without being reactive to it, you will find out that you're not feeling that judgment call. It will create a sense of mental ease. The last part is to providing some empathy for yourself. Recognizing that this voice, this harsh voice, is there to stay, and asking yourself, what do I need right now to nurture myself? What do I need right now to make sure that I'm okay? Maybe I need a counter voice that says, you got this, baby girl. Maybe you might want to say something positive about yourself. Maybe just give yourself a high five for trying to do something and getting better at it. For daring to step in and doing something bold, even though you're scared. So again, use the care method to your advantage. Practice it, making sure that you get into the habit of using it over and over again, and notice what happens to your inner critic when you do that. If you find this information helpful, I'd love to know what you think. Make sure you leave a comment below. Let me know how you like the workbook. Let me know how this helped you, and if there is anything that you want to know more. I'd love to be part of your journey. Thank you for stopping by.